Good morning. Morena. Yandra. That's a new one. It's a Fijian. Namaste. It's great to see you all, and I'm really excited to be here, to be able to share with your word and in person. And I hope you've had a good week. Yeah? Yeah, I've had a really good week. But today I'm going to pick up where Pastor CEO left it last week. And our amazing and handsome and youthful Pastor CEO. Because this is something that's been sowing in my life, it's been brewing in my heart. And if you haven't noticed that lately God has been speaking to us, church, about love, loving others, beyond us, and similar things. And you can go back and look through those sermons and you'll see that there is something that God is telling us about that. And that beautiful worship, Michelle, well done. Those songs, they're just so good and just reminds us how big our God's love is. And I'm very excited about that. When you say, why excited? Well, I'm excited because I really want to be part of a group, a part of a corporate transformation where our focus is not only on us, but on others, And I'm not saying we're not doing it, but I think we can still do better. We can do much better beyond these walls of this auditorium. So this morning I have some questions that I'm going to expand on. The first thing is, what does it mean to love others like yourself? Secondly, who is our neighbor? How much love should we be giving? How do we measure that? And why do we need to love others? So this morning I'm going to share about the second commandment of Jesus that he gave us and why it's so important. And then we will look at some misunderstandings about the second commandment. And then I will finish off with Apostle Paul's challenge to the church in Philippi. Now, last Sunday, we had a lovely message from Pastor CEO about the love test. And I can see that all of you who have listened to it have passed the test with flying colors. So today is your graduation Sunday. Graduating is a nice feeling. And that's why we're wearing purple, see? It's graduation color. When you graduate, you have done a test, you have worked so hard, and you get a reward. You get this certificate. You get to wear those wonderful gowns and take pictures, and it's a good time, But after the graduation, the real thing begins. You start looking for jobs. You get into the workforce, and that's when the tire hits the road. So today is a bit like that. After you leave this graduation service, you're going to hit the road, and that's where the real test will be, outside this University of Salt Church. All right. Let's open our Bibles to Matthew chapter 22, verse 39 to 40, and we're going to look at the second commandment. Matthew is not in the Old Testament. Okay. And I'm just going to read from my New King James. Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment." And this is the operative verse we are going to look at. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, the second commandment that Jesus gave us was to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I call this the second amendment, because Jesus gave this commandment and he says that all previous laws hang on these two. So in a way, Jesus, being God himself, was making an amendment to all these laws that were already given to the Israelites. And we know there are something like 613 commandments including the 10 Commandments, which we don't hear about much. But Jesus is saying that all those hang on these two. So when we talk about the Second Amendment, in America, it means the rights of the U.S. citizen to bear arms. Well, I want to tell you this morning that when we believe in Jesus, our greatest weapon is love. Our greatest heritage is love. Our greatest task is love. And our greatest gift is love. The second commandment is about love that can defeat everything. Love will defeat hate. Love will defeat poverty. Love can defeat greed. Love will defeat the enemy. And this is something we all need in our weaponry. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we see that this is so important to Jesus because, it's mentioned, 9 times in the Bible. It keeps coming up. You read the books of John, it comes up. You read Paul's message to the Philippi, it comes up. And you even go to the Old Testament and it's there as well. 1 time in the Old Testament, 8 times in the New Testament. So this must be really important for God to keep bringing it up, this lesson for his children. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now you think about it, it's just so simple, but yet so hard for us Christians to follow. I don't understand why it is so easy, but why it is so difficult to actually practice it in our daily lives. There's a man called Mahatma Gandhi. It's quite famous in India. And he said, I like your Christ, but I don't like your Christians. See, he couldn't see the love for others in the Christians of that time. It's one simple law. In fact, disciple John in 1 John chapter 4 sums it up really well. He sums up both these commandments into one, and he says it means believe in Jesus and love each other. Believe in Jesus and love each other. Just in a simplistic, all-embracing commandment. The second greatest commandment is essential to see God's love for the lost. So this morning I'm going to talk about this one simple law that God has given us. Now just let's imagine. We've got elections coming up, and let's say a new party wins majority by 80% and they change all the laws. No more laws in New Zealand. Only one. Love for others. Just imagine that. Love for others. Imagine the court system. We don't need lawyers anymore. We don't need a jury. Just a judge there. And if you do something wrong, let's say I gave a punch to my brother Keith and he gets a black eye. Because, if I get a black eye, you won't notice it. But also, if he gives me a black eye, I won't be here, I'll be flat. And I stand in front of the judge, and he goes, okay, so what did you do? Are you guilty of not loving your neighbor? I say, yeah. Okay, case dismissed. And he sentences me, whatever, you have to love your brother for the next 5 years and do his lawns. It'd be so simple. But this is what we have with Jesus. Love God, love your neighbors. Love God, love your neighbors. Now, I feel there is a few misunderstandings about the second commandment, and this is what I want to study this morning. There seems to be a misunderstanding, and we even see that there was this teacher, religious teacher, who questioned Jesus about this. And let's unwrap this. So for this description, I'm going to look at Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37. We'll see Luke's version of this. The first misunderstanding seems to be about who is your neighbor. Who is your neighbor? Why does Jesus use this collective description of a neighbor? Why not family? Why not brethren? Why not Gentiles? Why not others? Neighbor. So when we look in this passage in Luke, when Jesus is asked about who is your neighbor, he tells the story of a good Samaritan. And what we see in this story is that Jesus describes a neighbor as one who is in desperate need. Jesus describes your neighbor as someone who was robbed. Jesus describes the neighbor as someone who was cheated. Jesus describes a neighbor as someone who was wounded. In fact, it says he describes the neighbor as someone who was half dead. He chooses a neighbor who is a traveler. He chooses a neighbor who is a visitor. He chooses someone who was foreign in Jericho. Friends, your neighbor today is not just your own family or someone who lives next door or someone who works next to you. Our neighbors are the people who are displaced. Our neighbors are the refugees. Our neighbors are the migrants. Our neighbors are the visitors. Our neighbors are the brokenhearted. Our neighbors are the sickly. Our neighbors are the ones waiting to die at hospice. Our neighbor might not be the one who is the same color as us, or same ethnicity, or same socio-economic background. Our neighbors are the ones who are looking for hope in the midst of crisis. And we, the church, are the hands and feet of Christ. I can tell you, because of my place in the community, I am inundated almost every day with people with needs. And a lot of times I can't keep up, so I have to reach out to a lot of other people in the community. But I wish there were more hands. And this is where we need to be. And this is what I like with Ruby working for us beyond these walls and filling that gap. You don't have to have the mentality that your neighbor is only who you are next to. Your neighbor is one who needs you. Your neighbor is one who needs you. This morning I can say to you, maybe you are not my neighbor, but you are my family. I feel that you are my family. When I'm out walking in the city and I see you, I don't want to say, oh, there goes my neighbor. No. I want to say, hey, that's my brother. That's my sister. Family is something, we kind of love anyway. I mean, if we remember what Pastor Sio preached, he was giving us that illustration about his boy running into the water and how the natural love of a father reacted him to run after him and save him. We look after our family. We look after our friends. And quite often we forget the neighbors, the strangers, the ones who are displaced. So I hope you understand the true meaning of a neighbor, what Jesus was trying to tell us. And his illustration with that story about the Good Samaritan is epic. The second misunderstanding that I find is I need to take care of myself before I can help others. I don't love myself, so how can I love my neighbor? Maybe I need to love myself first. I've actually heard this in sermons. And I think this is a misunderstanding of the word. You know me, I work hard. I don't get holidays. I'm doing ministry work. I'm busy with this. I've got a family. I've got all these things happening. I need to take care of me first. Right? If I'm loved, I can help others. Right? Friends, our love towards others is a reflection of us. We need to know, if you're going through that mentality, if you're thinking like that, we really need to know that we are the head, not the tail. that greater is He that is in me than the one that is out there. We need to understand that in the scriptures, in the real scriptures, the assumption is that everybody loves themselves. So it's no point having our own pity parties. Everybody loves themselves. But maybe your situation is such that you're not in a good place. Perhaps you're going through bad times and we treat ourselves poorly. Perhaps we are just so overwhelmed with the circumstances around us that you can't stop to love yourself. Whatever it is, friends, it is a season. It is a small season. We all do love ourselves. And if you don't believe me, turn to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 29. And this is what it says. Previous to this verse, Jesus was talking about how God cares for the church. And then he talks about husbands, love your wives. And then he goes on to say that no one ever hates his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it. It says ever. No one ever. So what it's telling us that we always love ourselves. So please don't fall for this trap of self-worth. Your self-worth comes from loving God. Your self-worth comes from loving God and others. So the commandment says, love your neighbor as yourself. And when he says that, I don't think it's based on our situation. It's not based on where you are at. But it's about treating others how you would like to be treated yourself. So let's look at the Good Samaritan in this story. The Bible says, the Good Samaritan had compassion. He bandaged and medicated his wounds. He took him to shelter. He paid for his stay. He arranged for him to be taken care of. And he was going to come back and pay for the extra. Wow, can we match that? Church, let's be clear. Jesus wants us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And there are many among us. When you help your neighbors, you are actually helping yourself. When we help our neighbors, we are helping ourselves. When we help our neighbors, we are bringing God's love to them. When we help our neighbors, God shines through what you do. The next thing I want to share about is how much love. So from this story, we can see what the Good Samaritan, it's hard to match that. But think about what God has done for us. We can never match that. We've just been singing about His reckless love. We can never match that. But what is Jesus telling us about, how much love we should give to our neighbor? The scripture says, love your neighbor as yourself. For me, that is a 1:1. That's a quantity of 1:1. He's not telling us to give up everything. He's not telling us to, imbalance it. He's just saying, just do what you do for yourself. Do it for them. Do whatever you're going to do for yourself. Do it for them. It's not that hard. Love your neighbor as yourself. What this tells me is, if we love ourselves a lot, then we love them a lot. And I used this illustration before this morning. If you are going to give somebody a car, make sure you don't give them a bomb. Okay? If you're going to give them a car, make sure you give them a car that works well, which is safe, and one that you would drive. Okay? If you're going to cook food for your neighbors, don't use it as a good opportunity to clear your pantry or clear your freezer or clear your leftovers. No. Cook up some nice food that you would do for yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. You know, in today's society, most things are measured in monetary terms. Even most businesses, even though you will hear that the staff is the most important asset and this and that, you know. But when it comes down to the crunch, it's all based on financial reports, how the performance is going. And sometimes our churches are like that too. And we need the income, you know. Our programs are based on what we have and what we can do. And I'm not sure what our church is budgeting for our neighbors, but I don't think it's 1:1. But it'll be good to get to that. Amen. It'll be good. It'll be so wonderful if we could invest outside these walls what we invest inside these walls. You know, that's what missions is about, you know. And if we can begin to see that, then this is what I see in this commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. 1:1. Now we're going to look at Paul, because he was just as excited as Jesus. And in Philippians chapter 2, Paul is talking to the church in Philippi. Now, Paul loves this church in Macedonia, the Philippians. You know, they were the best. They were generous. They were kind. They were caring. They were joyful. And they were united. You know, he called them partners in the gospel. And in chapter 1, he urges them to live a life worthy of the gospel. But in chapter 2, he's talking about how they could complete his joy. Now, Paul obviously he was in jail. He was struggling like anything. But he was so happy because the work of God was progressing. The neighbors were hearing the word of God. And he says to them, but you can make my joy complete by verse 3. So Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look not only for his own interest, but also the interest of others. We see that Paul is so passionate. He's passionate like Jesus was, and he's challenging to the Philippians to look at the interest of others. He's saying, okay, focus yourself. You have your own interest, but I want you to focus on others as well. I want you to consider the interest of others, including those around you. Church, we are no different. We're just like the Philippians. The needs are even greater today. Who is going to sacrifice? Who is going to stand in the gap for others? We need more and more of us to stand in that gap. And this morning I want to share the story of a man who is doing that in this church. This man has been part of this church many, many years. His contribution to this family is significant. I'm talking about the man on our keys, Alan Anderson. It was such an honor to meet him about 5 years ago. And I want to point out that if you think his contribution to this body is big, you have no idea what he's doing outside these walls. And this is what I want to concentrate on. It started as a simple thing. About 5 years ago, he befriended a new staff at his work. And he became friends with him. Not only that, he went on to adopt him as a son. Because the young man had lost his father a couple of years ago. And now this man is not European. He is, he's got different interests. He's not someone you would say is your neighbor, and but someone who is not of his ethnicity, even not the same religion, has totally different interest. But Alan took him up. And the funny thing is that me and Alan have been coming to this church for 10, 15 years. I've been here 25 years. But our paths never crossed in that way. We've said maybe hello and I. But the moment he met this young man, and he asked him if he knew me, and suddenly Alan and I became, good friends. It didn't stop there. Alan decided to join us in our Hindi group, Satsang. And he started coming to our life group, and he started making a huge impact. He just doesn't come there. He actually shows up and makes an impact. 99% of the time, he's the only European there. And we all speaking in Hindi. But he still doesn't miss. In the 4 years that I know, he has not missed one satsang. No, I can't even match that. This is how much interest he has in others. And today, he has adopted about 7 sons who don't have fathers. Some of them are Indians, Fijians, Maori young men. They are Muslims, they are Hindus, and they are Sikhs. This is a man who is interested in others, and his action backs it up. This is a man who brings joy to Apostle Paul. He doesn't need to do that. He's a busy man. He's not that young anymore to take up sons, let alone grandsons. But he realized that others need him. Alan, my friend, you're a legend. It also reminds me of another man in this church who was very significant outside these walls. He's not here today, my friend Pekka. I miss him very much. And I could go on and on about what he did out there. So as I wrap it up today, let me ask you, what is the most important thing you are supposed to do apart from loving God? What is the most important purpose in your life apart from loving God? Are you going to tell me that it's your family? Are you going to tell me that it's your work? Are you going to tell me it's your accomplishments? Or is it your health or wealth? Or is it to follow righteousness? Can it be love for others? Can I challenge you? The second and the greatest commandment is to love for others. When today becomes history for our children's children, like the song says, will they say that amidst the chaos of 2020, there was love? Let's put Christ in the Christian. If you want to make his joy complete, think of others, get interested in them. Just talking about it, just preaching about it, it's not going to cut it. We need to take some practical steps. And I'll give you some. If you have a heart for youths, I can tell you our youths need you more than any other time in history. Our youths need people like us. Today, 22 years ago, 20th of September, on a Sunday, I was leaving church. I got a call. My brother, who was 20 years old, died. I didn't talk about it in the first services with mom and dad. I didn't want to upset them. I lost my young brother, just like that. And I always wished that somebody had talked to him, or he had talked to somebody. If you have a heart for youths, make it count. If you're interested in reaching the Indians, you don't have to go to India. You can't go anywhere. It's locked down. But you can come to satsang.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. Just like Alan did. In fact, this morning I've had people approach me and say, "Oh yeah, when is satsang? Can I come?" It's great. There's over 2,000 Indians in this town. And I can tell you, most of them, because I don't know how they get my number, they ring me. And I can see the need, the urgency. Not just for accommodation, but they just ring me about ideas. "Oh, I want to buy a house. What do you think? Oh, I want to do this. I want to start a business. What do you think?" There's our opportunity. If you want to help the kids, we've got lots of vacancies at Salt Kids. Hey, Ruth. If you want to help solo mothers and the needy, we have teamworks. And if you have, this is something I shared this morning as well, and somebody came and saw me. If you want to help people who are homeless, families who are homeless, who could own a home, and you're sitting on a lot of equity, come and see me, or come and see Phil. We'll help you. I had one lady come to me this morning, and she's really keen to do that. I've done it about 25 times now. We have helped people with the equity and then gifted them the equity they've gained. And most of them have gone on to do really well. Some of them have even bought a second home. But that's how it starts, friends. Real things. Remember, some people may never get the love of God if you don't reach out. And this is why we need to reach out. But at the same time, this morning, I want to encourage people who have been discouraged by helping others. Don't give up. I want to encourage those who are overwhelmed with the situation around us and they are discouraged to help others. The Bible tells us that in the end times, the love of many will grow cold. We cannot afford to do that, church. We need it even more today. Love for others is not an option. Like I said, it's that one law. Love God, love for others. Nothing else. No other rules. It's not an option. Are you going to be the person that your neighbors are going to look for?